the mark of Cain was a particular mark he received from God. In other words, the Lord placed this mark on Cain after he took the life of his own brother, Abel. However, the Bible doesn't specify exactly what this mark was. Therefore, despite popular curiosity in trying to decipher it, this mark remains a mystery, and any attempt to define it is nothing more than speculation and a waste of time. Discussing the mark of Cain is a delicate topic, and why? Because over the centuries several misinterpretations have emerged. The most serious of these, and possibly the most widespread, claims that the mark of Cain was a transformation in his skin color, going from light to dark. It's clear that, besides having no biblical basis, this interpretation is absurd, discriminatory, malicious, and sinful. However, it was widely disseminated in the Middle Ages and even used as a pretext to legitimize racism and slavery. Thus, many went so far as to declare that dark-skinned people were descendants of Cain and under a divine curse. This is complete nonsense. Once again, we must affirm, this kind of claim had no connection whatsoever to the true biblical message. No connection whatsoever. In reality, it was simply a device used by people without fear of God to sustain their ambition and cruelty. And a simple reading of the book of Genesis already shows how this reasoning doesn't hold up. Why? Because the entire lineage of Cain was destroyed in the flood the Lord sent upon the earth in the days of Noah. Thus, to claim that black people are descended from Cain is inconceivable and completely baseless. Some have even suggested that one of Noah's daughters-in-law, preserved in the flood, was black and a descendant of Cain. But, once again, this finds no support in Scripture. It's utter nonsense. But after all, what can we really say about the mark of Cain? What is the true meaning of this sign? Since we don't know exactly what it was, we need to set aside absurdities. The Bible itself, however, gives us some important details about the mark of Cain. And before anything else, it's essential that we return to the biblical text. In the book of Genesis, chapter 4, verses 9 to 15, we find the account that directly addresses the mark of Cain. Verse 9 states, "And the Lord said to Cain, 'Where is Abel your brother?' He answered, 'I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?' Then God said, 'What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now cursed are you by the ground, which has opened its mouth to drink your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth.' Cain replied, 'My guilt is too great to be forgiven. You have driven me this day from the earth, and I will be hidden from your face. I will be a fugitive and a wanderer, and everyone who finds me will try to kill me.' But the Lord answered him, 'Therefore, whoever kills Cain will be punished sevenfold.' And the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would harm him." So, first of all, the Hebrew word used to refer to this mark simply means sign, symbol, or mark. And, to emphasize once again, never, ever, is this Hebrew word used in the biblical text to refer to skin color. Second, the mark of Cain was visible, making him easily recognizable. Therefore, some interpret it as a tattoo of sorts. Others speculate that it might have been an unusual height, although the biblical text doesn't state anything about this. Third, the purpose of the mark God placed on Cain was to function as a sign of protection. It was a mark meant to prevent anyone from taking his life. Yes, it indicated God's curse upon him, but at the same time it was also a shield, a barrier that ensured his preservation. In other words, the mark prevented Cain from being attacked by those seeking to avenge Abel's blood. Therefore, many biblical commentators understand that Cain's mark, in some way, directly reflected God's mercy. Fourth, Scripture declares that God placed the mark only on Cain, and only on him. At no point does the biblical text state that this mark was passed on to his descendants. What does this tell us? That Cain received the mark, but his children did not. The word does not say that God marked Cain's children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren. And what, in fact, did Cain's children share with him? It wasn't the mark, but rather the practice of an unrighteous life, a hardened heart inclined to evil, and the pleasure of disobeying God's will. This they inherited. The book of Genesis itself clearly shows how Cain's wicked descendants brought that civilization to the wrath of the Lord, which culminated in the flood. And finally, fifth, the mark of Cain is mentioned in only one verse of Scripture, the very one we've already read. No other biblical text returns to this topic. And what does this teach us? It reveals that, in His wisdom, God decided we don't need any further details about this mark. I know many seek answers, driven by curiosity. What was the mark of Cain? What did it mean? What was its mystery? But God, in His infinite wisdom, decided that there would be no benefit to us in knowing the exact nature of this mark. Therefore, knowing precisely what the mark of Cain was is not essential to our faith. Anything beyond what is revealed is mere speculation, without any biblical basis. And if you've heard any other explanations or theories about the mark of Cain that we didn't mention here, please share them in the comments. It might be interesting for others too. If this explanation brought you clarity, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, take advantage now. Subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any Bible studies. May God bless your life greatly.